Everyone, the Senate Rules Committee will come to order. Please call the roll.
Senators Cedillo? Here. Cedillo here. Dutton? Here. Dutton here. Padilla? Onestad? Here. Onestad here. Steinberg?
Here.
Steinberg here.
Okay. Want to welcome Senator Padilla to the committee. Thank him for stepping in, and Mr. Maybe in his stead for now. No, he'll be here in a moment. We want to begin today with an acknowledgement. An acknowledgement and a thank you to two members who are terming out, and thus, at least as far as the regular session is concerned, you guys, for all you know, you'll be here 5 more times. But as far as the regular session is concerned, this is their last Rules Committee meeting. We want to honor Senator Sam Onestad and Senator Gil Cedillo for their outstanding service. This committee I've chaired now for a year and a half, and I must tell you, it is fascinating, and what's most fascinating to me is to see the way members interact in this setting. Even though the floor is always courteous and such, the partisan or ideological differences, are seen real visibly in policy committees and on the floor. But here in the Rules Committee, because we're really the stewards of the House, the members take their roles very seriously, and it is a different atmosphere. Maybe it can be replicated in other settings as well. And certainly Senator Onestad, our vice chair, has exemplified exactly what I'm just talking about. Sam has served on the committee since December 2008. Our dear friend Senator Cedillo, who will continue his legislative service, has served since December 2004. I was just, 17 years old at the time. It's always easy, to criticize politicians. Sometimes we even deserve it. But I must say, every week that this committee meets, these two gentlemen have brought us civil and responsible participation, which is exactly what the democratic process, we all agree, should be. This committee, for those who are just watching for the first time or here for the first time, governs our House and acts as the check and balance on the executive branch of government as we consider gubernatorial appointments and determine whether or not to confirm or not confirm those appointments. I want to also thank their great staffs, Bill Bailey, and I want to thank Dan Savage as well for being sort of de facto members of the committee themselves by virtue of what it takes to prepare the members for each and every hearing. This term limit thing is bittersweet because, you get to know people and your fellow members like family. And so we wanted to just take a moment and thank you and acknowledge your service. All right? No, Senator Onestad, you can't say. Yes, of course. Yes, Senator Onestad. Yours.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair and President Pro Tem. Of all the committees in the last 12 years I've served on, this one has a unique position in the closeness that we are to the staff. Bill Bailey is with me every hour of the day. I believe that there's more preparation on the part of the staff here per unit of time spent with Greg and Nettie and their people. I think the thing that first impressed me after attending my first couple of meetings was the quality of the staff. You run a tight ship, Nettie and Greg, but you also are absolutely fair. You are very professional, and the amount of information that we are given, there is no excuse for any member not coming to the right conclusion at any time on any issue. I can't believe the number of hours you spend on the process that we use to review the different candidates that are here as nominees, and the amount of research, and also on the issues that we vote on after they've disappeared. And I think that's what's made this committee so unique. The experience and the staff, I will never forget. So I want to just say thank you. It's been an honor to be on the Rules Committee. Really didn't know what I was getting into when I was appointed, but I thank you for having had the chance to serve with people like Greg and Nettie and the chair and other members and the staff here, and Bill Bailey. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Senator Onestad. Very much. Senator Cedillo.
Well, thank you. This is a little surprising and unexpected, but the same. I want to thank the staff. I think people don't have an appreciation for how much work the staff puts into every meeting, the preparation, the screening, the background checks, the scheduling, everything that's involved, and all the things we don't even know that are involved. The staff does an incredible job of making sure we're prepared to serve the state in this real important function. And of course, my staff, Dan Savage, who should be here somewhere, I'm sure. All the work that he does in my place, the interviews, the meetings, the candidates that come in, all that he does to make sure that I have the information needed for the decisions we have to make. Sam, thank you for your leadership. The decorum is critical. I fear that we may lose that in term limits. We need to really honor the traditions of the Senate and the decorum and the relationships that are built here. And I fear that term limits challenges that. So you've been very committed and demonstrative in showing your commitment to that. I thank you for your leadership. Bobby, of course. I enjoyed working here also with Roy Ashburn. I had a lot of fun with him when he was here. I thank Senator Parada for giving me the opportunity to be on Rules Committee. You were only 17 at the time. I thank him. Here's Dan Savage. And Senator Steinberg, thank you for allowing me to continue to serve you and this committee and the Senate and this legislature. As I said, Senator Parada gave me an opportunity, and I thank you for continuing that. It's been a real privilege and a real honor, and I thank you.
Thank you very much, Gil. Thank you. To both of you, let's move on with our business. Without objection, I would like to remove and continue items 2, E, F, G, and H to another hearing. No objection? Very good. Let's now go to file item 1, which is governor's appointees appearing today. We welcome Felicia A. Marcus as a member of the Delta Stewardship Council. Oh, excuse me, Felicia, if I may. Just we do have a colleague here, assembly member, probably soon to be senator, who has an item here, and if it's quick, we'd be happy to dispense with that item first. Mr. Hernandez, if it is quick.
Thank you, Senator, and senators, for allowing me to present, and it will be quick, hopefully. Good afternoon. I'm pleased to present ACR 152, which recognizes National Car Care Month. California's automotive aftermarket employees.
File item 13, members.
220,000 people in nearly 30,000 establishments statewide, and is vital and a steady component of the state's economy. A robust automotive aftermarket market is essential for keeping cars clean and running safely, and I thank you and ask for your support.
I'd like to have a lengthy discussion about car care. No, I think it is, I appreciate you coming before the Rules Committee, Assemblymember Hernandez. It sounds like fine resolution, not controversial. We'll take Senator Dutton's motion.
Question, is it wax on or wax off? Which one?
Wax.
I guess wax on comes before wax off.
Please call the roll.
Senator Cedillo. Cedillo, aye. Dutton. Senator Dutton. Dutton, aye. Padilla. Honested. Honested, aye. Steinberg.
Aye.
Steinberg, aye.
4-0. It's fine.
Thank you very much, Mr.
Thank
Chair.
you. Thank you very much. All right, now let's go back to file item 1. Felicia A. Marcus is a member of the Delta Stewardship Council. Ms. Marcus, it is a pleasure to see you. Want to welcome you.
Thank you.
We have a tradition here at the Rules Committee. If you would like to introduce any member of your family or special guest that is here today, please feel free to do so, and then a brief opening statement, and then we'll ask you a few questions.
Okay. Were you?
Oh, God. Senator Pavley, come here. My peripheral, I'm sorry.
I've had one of those days.
One of those days. I'm sorry. We are pleased to have the chair of the Natural Resources and Water Committee, who was instrumental in helping push and pass last year's comprehensive water package, Senator Fran Pavley, to introduce our nominee.
Thank you very much, and I'm absolutely honored to be here and honored to introduce Felicia Marcus. I've known her for many years and followed her amazing career. She was the founder of Heal the Bay, Chief Operating Officer for the Trust for Public Land, and currently is the Western Director of Natural Resources Defense Council. I've known Felicia very well, and people agree she's someone who is fair, thoughtful, bright, articulate, and personable, all good qualities. She has been a bridge builder between environmental groups in the private sector and government. As president of the board of LA's Department of Public Works, she was able to get projects approved and built. Easier said than done in many cases. Later, from 1993 to 2001, as regional administrator of the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, Felicia worked collaboratively and effectively with multiple stakeholders on air, water, and hazardous waste issues. In particular, and this is very relevant to your discussion today and her confirmation, Felicia was a key player achieving the Bay Delta Accord and Agreement. More recently, she gained bipartisan trust and helped bring the parties to agreement on last year's water policy legislation. I know she worked very hard behind the scenes to make that happen. Felicia brings a wealth of experience not only in complex public policy decision-making, but in knowing what it takes to make progress with people and on the ground. She is a results-oriented person, but is also people-oriented and fact-based. I think she will be a marvelous, wonderful member of the Delta Stewardship Council, and I'm here to support her nomination and approval.
Thank you very much, Senator Pavley. That introduction means a lot.
Thank you.
And now, Ms. Marcus, again, any introductions, and then a brief opening statement, and then we'll get right into it.
Thank you. My husband was not able to come today, but he did want me to thank you all for allowing me to appear today rather than last week. I know that's an additional hearing for you, and I really appreciate your courtesy on that. Thank you all for your time this afternoon. I am extremely honored to be before you today for your consideration. I also know that you're in the midst of your most busy and challenging time of the year, so I'm going to try to be brief, and then I'm here to answer any of your questions. 3 points. First, I believe that the work of the Delta Stewardship Council is critically important and equally challenging. I do not have an illusion that there's a magic answer or that I possess it. What I do believe is that the Council provides the best opportunity we've seen in years to make substantial progress on these issues in a transparent and thoughtful way, taking into account a broad range of important issues from flood protection to water supply to water use efficiency to ecosystem restoration, etc., the eight items listed in the bill and more, and doing it in a way that listens to and honors the multiplicity of interested parties across the state. It's a very tall order, and I'm humbled and honored to think that people think I can be of service here. So I want to thank them all, including the people who are in the room today, those who wrote my letters, those who've encouraged me, and those who drafted me for this, I think.
Thank you very much. We know it wasn't necessarily an easy route to this to this moment in time, but we appreciate you. I know I personally appreciate you sort of hanging in there, if you will, and your willingness to do that. And more important, those of us who were intimately involved in the most difficult negotiation possible last year over the water package know how indispensable you were to that successful outcome, because it took stretching from all sides. We all know that. And there were a lot of groups on everybody's flank, left, right, and middle, who were opposed to what we were doing, in part because it wasn't perfect. But you stayed with it and stayed with us, and I think that will serve you very well as you also try to figure out the right solutions and the compromises around implementation. I really just have a couple of questions. Namely, one of the attributes that you bring to this position is your considerable federal experience. And so when it comes to the difficulties that California is having financially, do you have any thoughts about how we might be more effective in accessing federal resources to complete the work that the water package laid out?
Thank you, Senator. I think in general part of that is working with our delegation at the federal level, our senators and our congresspeople. That becomes very important through the course of the progress. They're very interested, so I think that's important. But I also think it'll be important for the federal family, and I have a lot to catch up on at this stage, because I'm from another time in that arena. But I think it's very important for the federal family to come together and to really figure out how to play their role. And I think it's important for the state to be calling on the federal family to do that. And when you end up with a unified federal approach from the agencies and the administration, along with our elected officials, we're more likely to get money. But I think there's a tremendous interest on the part of our delegation in being as helpful as they can, even in tough economic times.
Thank you. You know, last week I asked Mr. Fiorini and Mr. Nordoff about how they separate their day job, if you will, and their specific interests with their duty and role as a member of the Stewardship Council. So I want to make sure, in fairness, that I ask you the same question. You come from, obviously, a very prominent environmental background. And how will you assure those who might wonder about how that would affect your decision-making, good or bad, how you see the differentiation of your roles?
Well, thank you. That's an excellent question. I think I am, and I feel that I am being appointed for me and who I am, as opposed to where I work at this particular point in time. And I see myself as being an individual, a citizen of the state of California, getting, hopefully, the honor to play a role in public policy to be helpful in advancing a very difficult issue. Personally, I've spent a lot of time in my life making hard decisions that have made people in the environmental world unhappy, or even when I've been within the environmental world. So I think I have a history of being an honest broker, a fair dealer, and someone who's reasonable in general. And I would definitely bring that to this job, because I think it deserves no less. As far as where I sit right now, I'll be meeting with the staff council to see what we have to do to make sure that I clearly am doing all that I have to do to make my role on the Stewardship Council my role on the Stewardship Council.
Okay. Members?
Ms. Marcus, thank you for your time today. I'm sorry we didn't get a chance to talk earlier. It's just been
I understand.
Kind of a hectic 2 weeks here.
Yes.
I want to follow up on the question that the chair started with, and that basically is conflict of interest. The person you're succeeding was actually opposed by NRDC because of, quote, conflicts. And yet here you are as the Western Director of NRDC, going to sit on the Delta Stewardship Council. I am aware of several lawsuits over the past many years by NRDC regarding the Delta. And I would like to have you just expound a little more on how you see that you can be conflict-free as the director of NRDC when with the history of all of those lawsuits. You said you made some people unhappy in the environmental world. I can tell you made a lot of people unhappy in the water world. I mean, that's, I think, a fair statement. I want you to make me happy with your answer here.
I'll do the best I can. Best I can. I hesitate to get into the conversation about the prior nominee for this position, who's a dear friend of mine and colleague. And what I understand, a number of environmental groups' issue of conflict had to do with BDCP, with the Delta Council being an appellate body, specifically on that. With regard to conflicts, because I'm at NRDC, I don't actually believe there are a huge number of them. I will be spending time with council to be clear that whatever we do, that I make sure that I steer clear of any kind of even semblance of a conflict. But I've been told that just by being virtue of NRDC, it's not a conflict, because there are many participants in the complex world of water who have filed litigation, not just NRDC. Water agencies have filed litigation. A lot of people have used litigation as a tool. It's one tool, as is legislative advocacy, as is settling litigation, which we have a long and storied history of being very pragmatic about, as is working things out with people. I think the support that I've gotten from so many water agencies, I hope, can give you some comfort that there are many in the water world who feel that I personally, in my individual capacity in this job, can do a fair job. And I think I have a 20-year record of being in a rather unusual position of being able to do that, where many of my other colleagues or people in other stakeholder groups have not been able to do that. And it's a very important part to me of who I am. And I think that's how we make the most progress, by figuring out how to look at things based on the facts, based on everyone's interests, and trying to be fair about the right outcome. What I like about the legislation, and what I like about how the council has started to do its work, is that it's going to be transparent, that a whole host of needs are there, from the co-equal goals to all 8 of them, and that it's supposed to be right out there in front of us all the time as we make our decisions, out in front of the public. That's part of why I think this council is such a good idea, so that there aren't decisions being made in funny back rooms or in different places. That, there's always some of that, but on this issue, pulling it all together in a transparent way where everybody can come and see what's happening and see what people are saying and make the decisions based on the facts is, I think, a very good setup for success. And I think I'm well suited to being put into that position.
Are you aware of any NRDC litigation that is pending or affecting the Delta Stewardship Council or its parameters?
I don't think so.
Okay. If you do become aware, how will you handle that?
I suspect I would go straight to council, which is always the first thing one ought to do if something came up down the line. I mean, very much, I haven't had my meeting with council yet to talk about it, but I think this may be partially because I'm a lawyer, but also in order to be safe, I think first thing you do is you talk to your council, particularly on matters of conflicts. I think it's very important.
One other question, to be fair to the other members that appeared here, I believe it was last week or 2 weeks ago, and I told them that my support kind of hinges on the answer to this question. As background, I represent 12 counties north of Sacramento, and I've made the statement that, we look at Sacramento as Southern California from where I live. And yet 80% of the water that comes down into the Delta comes through my 4th Senate district. We're a very water-conscious district. My agribusiness, which is the #1 economy, depends on a safe, reliable supply of water. And there are some contracts that are 150 years old, giving water rights to a lot of the land users and agribusiness people in my district, all the way from the Oregon border down to Sutter County. And the fact is that we are very well aware that Southern California needs more water, that if there is a system of alternate, a peripheral canal or other conveyances through the Delta, that's going to demand more water from the north. And I guess my interest, since I feel that Southern California is so well represented by the 117 legislators in the state who don't represent Northern California, we're outnumbered. I feel a little geographically protective about the water rights, the area of origin rights, and I'd like to know how you feel about those long-standing contracts and the authority that the Delta Stewardship Council has been given to maybe change those contracts or the way that water is conveyed from north to south.
Understandable question and a beautiful, beautiful district. I sort of two quick thoughts and responses. One is that I don't know that the Stewardship Council has that authority, because I think the statute's very clear to preserve, even by name, area of origin and all pre-existing statutes. It's only the Water Board that can actually change anything related to water rights after a lengthy sort of a hearing. I don't think there's any intention to do that. I think it's important. But there's another point that I'd like to make, because I think many of us share many of your same concerns about that, even on behalf of protecting the ecosystem and the fish that need water to stay within the system. And that's why the package of bills was very important last year, and that the governance piece, so that there would be a transparent place to make decisions, was critical, and so was water use efficiency, with the water use efficiency bill being a down payment on it, because the idea of being able to move water faster, to waste it more in the South is not appealing, I think, to anyone. And so, to me, if you were going to ask me one of the prime motivators, values, et cetera, that I bring, is that we should use efficiency first before we start taking more water places. We haven't even begun to use the water that we do use as efficiently as we might. Southern California has been doing it longer. I was a part of doing that in Los Angeles, because we found that by doing water conservation effectively, we not only use less water, but our sewage treatment costs were lower, and we were able to get better sewage treatment results. So we actually had a tremendous amount of water conservation going on through our agency in general. But I think that it sort of pedal to the metal on that first, recycling, reuse, et cetera, so that we make the best use of our water resources before we take more of it. So I think you would find me a kindred spirit in many ways.
Thank you.
Other members have questions? Senator Stutton?
Yeah, I just, I guess when I was looking at your application, certainly you've got a really great background in history, but I am concerned about perception, and we have to deal with that all the time. And I'm still having a hard time with the perception that there won't be a conflict of interest, even if there may not be a legal one. So I'm really actually more concerned about the non-legal perception, because the Delta is such a critical project in the water bond and everything that's going to go along with it. It's so critical that in order for somebody, the public, to be able to buy in, they got to feel like nobody has any real personal gain in this thing. You're going to be representing the public, and yet you are employed by a pretty powerful group, an association, and you have a pretty high level involvement with them. So I'm still having a hard time with the idea that you're actually, if you were sitting there as an individual, that you're going to end up going one way and the NRDC may go another way. I'm having a hard time that you're going to operate as one. So, but I'm also concerned about the public perception. So can you kind of, maybe, is there anything you can tell me that maybe give me a little bit more comfort level that how I'm going to deal with this public perception that we're going to have that we have a conflict.
Well, I would just say I appreciate the dose of respect for NRDC's power, so to speak, but it's one of many organizations, just like there are many different water agencies and many different groups, and so I think I can't speak to what the perception is out in the
Well, I can tell you, the
public, but
legislature, it's pretty substantial. I mean, I watched. They haven't been on the same page with me a lot of times, and I've seen some things that didn't make sense to me. I didn't quite understand, knowing what their agenda is supposed to be. I was a little concerned about what their real objective is, because it seemed to me, and sometimes it might almost be conflicting. But that's my perception. That's what I'm looking at. And you being such a prominent member of their upper management level, that's what's got me the concern. I'm having a hard time believing that you're going to be able to operate truly independent. But like I said, it's more of a perception problem at this time. But no, NRDC the perception's real. I mean, they're a very, very influential organization. So.
Can I follow up before you answer? Because this will lead to the question. As you were involved, Ms. Marcus, in helping negotiate the comprehensive water agreement, okay, and you were in the middle of it, I will attest to that. Can you describe which environmental organizations communicated to you directly that what you were doing was inconsistent with, this is my words, strong environmental principles?
well, I don't want to really get into them. There were, as many may know, there was a split within the environmental community, and some were willing to move forward working together with some of the others, and others thought it wasn't good enough from their perspective, from an environmental perspective, and some of us decided it was a great step forward.
Okay, so you don't want to rat anybody out. I get it, but let me. I want to. There's a point to be made here that Is it fair to say that you were under some fairly intense pressure, both the NRDC and you as an individual, to back off from your support of the water package from different environmental groups who did not agree with you?
Oh, certainly. Certainly.
And to describe intense, that's my word. I mean,
it was just intense.
Okay.
People had very, very strong feelings. I mean, the thing I would say, and again, I'm not sure this answers your question, Senator Dutton, because it's more about me than it is about the optics, but the space I do tend to occupy is that space between the parties where things fall apart. And I just think I've been privileged to have that be a unique role that I've been able to play in various arenas, and I think that's why I'm here rather than where I happen to work right now. But I understand your point. I just am not sure how to allay the concern.
Yeah, that's something that we always have to deal with on a regular basis. Now, when you were involved with the water bond and so forth, you weren't representing yourself. You were actually representing the NRDC during those negotiations, right?
Yeah, I was part of the team. I wouldn't say I was representing, but I was part of the team that was brought in to help, yes.
You were being paid by the NRDC
to
do that, right?
Absolutely.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That's what I wanted to make sure.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, you're good. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I just wanted to chime in, not so much with specific questions, but just words of support. I've had a chance to work with Ms. Marcus, not as much recently in my capacity as a state legislator, but in my prior life, during my time at the Los Angeles City Council and as president of the council, both on issues relative to the Department of Water and Power, and especially with the Department of Public Works, our TMDL's issue, and maintaining not just water quality onshore, but also offshore, given the connectivity of the Los Angeles River and some of the issues pertaining to that. So my experience has been nothing but extremely, extremely positive, and would urge our support.
Thank you.
Thank you. Let's hear from witnesses in support of the nominee, please. Nope.
Stay.
Ms. Cole.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Kathy Cole with the Metropolitan Water District of Southern California. Ms. Marcus's experience at the federal level with US EPA brings a wealth of experience on water quality issues. Her experience at the state as one of the founding mothers of the 1994 Bay Delta Accord, which I would argue was the catalyst for recognizing that the Delta was in a state of disarray and we needed to do something comprehensively. And then at the local level, a real appreciation that she has for investing in local infrastructure to ensure water quality, water reliability at an affordable cost is invaluable for the Council's deliberations. And for that reason, we urge your aye vote.
Thank you. Next, Mr. Caves.
Mr. Chairman and members, Joe Caves, Conservation Strategy Group. I just want to say there would not be a Delta Stewardship Council. We would not have a water package today without Felicia Marcus. When she sort of parachuted into Sacramento, the negotiations were stalled. She was the key broker, I think, that allowed the environmental community to come together and find a point where they could reach agreement with the water community. She was able to do that really because of her unique perspective, her background, and her credibility. That comes from two things. She has been a leader at the local level, at the state level, and at the national level with environmental groups, and she has real credibility there. But she has also run a major public works agency, and she has implemented laws at the federal level. And when she talks to us, the environmental community, about the complexities, we have to listen. And so for the water package to come together, the environmental community had to get outside of its comfort level. They had to get way outside of that zone and be willing to stretch and realize that for the common good, to reach a major agreement like this, everybody had to take risks. Everybody had to get out here and make compromises. Felicia is one of the few people in this state with the credibility to make that happen. The same thing will be true on the Delta Stewardship Council. If we are going to reach the kinds of agreements that are going to be needed to meet the water needs of the state while protecting the environment, everybody's going to have to get out of their comfort zone. For the environmental community to be able to get to that place, we need a leader who has credibility, who has experience at all levels, developing policy, implementing policy, doing projects, who can speak to us, to have that credibility, to be able to bring our community into an agreement that will be needed to reach the compromises required for the Delta plan to work, for the Delta Stewardship Council to be able to function effectively. I really want to urge you to support her and appreciate the governor's appointment. Thanks.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. I'm Louis Bloomberg. I'm here today representing the Nature Conservancy, where I work. The Nature Conservancy has been very concerned about the Delta and its functioning ecosystem for quite some time, and we recognize that the impacts of climate change will only make that function even more at risk, and we're quite pleased that Felicia Marcus has been nominated by the governor for this position because we believe she has the talent, the skills, and the experience, and the exceptional skills that have been well articulated today to succeed in this position and help protect our Delta for the future. And so the Nature Conservancy is pleased to support Felicia. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Chair and members, Dan Taylor on behalf of Audubon, California, and I too am here to express our strong support for this nominee. We have known her and worked with her closely for over 20 years, and we see her as a person of incredible talent and integrity that will bring real value to this important process. And I believe that she, along with the distinguished chair of the Stewardship Council, who's, I believe, here today, and the other distinguished Californians who are being charged with this responsibility, are poised to do an outstanding job. We're happy to support her. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yes?
Randy Knaus, East Bay Municipal Utility District. Senator Steinberg, committee members, East Bay MUD has had an opportunity to work with Ms. Marcus going back over 15 years to her time serving in the Clinton administration. We have had lots of opportunity to work with her. We are very supportive of her confirmation. Responding to the questions that Senator Dutton posed and Senator Anasted, and you touched on it yourself, Senator Steinberg, can she be a good judge? Can she be a fair judge and put aside the views of her employer? I would note for you that we were not among the supporters of last fall's water deal. We were on the other side of that issue.
Kidding.
And we spent a meeting with Ms. Marcus going over these issues, and I can tell you her honesty in brokering the issues, her willingness to look at our needs, our concerns, her willingness to divorce herself from the perspective of NRDC and just try and understand our needs and find a solution that meets the needs of all Californians was really the hallmark of her participation in the Delta package. And for those reasons, we are supportive of her confirmation.
Thank you very much. A testimony is meaningful for the reasons you just stated. Thank you. Mr. Davis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members, I'm Ron Davis with the Association of California Water Agencies. I'm here to support the nomination of Felicia Marcus on behalf of the association. You've heard the distinguished career she's enjoyed, and the decisions she's had to make are indeed tough sometimes, and we believe that will be very valuable in terms of moving forward and accomplishing the co-equal goals that the Delta Stewardship Council is going to be responsible for. And so we urge your aye vote.
Thank you. Support? Still?
Good afternoon, Chairman, members of the committee. Paul Mason with the Pacific Forest Trust. And I would just echo the comments that my colleagues have already made, that indeed we're very lucky to have somebody of Felicia's competence and experience to serve on this commission. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any witnesses in opposition to the nominee? If not, I'd like to make a statement here, but I...
You really make them come up and sit right next to the person that they're opposing?
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. That's why we have security here. Oh, wait a minute. It's okay. Short little caucus. I appreciate the concerns that Senators Dutton and Senators Onestad have put out there through their questioning. I would just remind my colleagues of a couple of things. Number one, the Stewardship Council, with the exception of a Delta representative, is all public members. And the governor, in his appointments, appropriately, I think, sought to ensure that the public membership represented the diversity of California geographically and in terms of background and interests. Last week, we confirmed in this committee Mr. Fiorini, who has a very strong background in agriculture. It's his business, it's what he does, and his views, if you will, are well known on many of the questions that are at issue with the water package. Mr. Nordoff said very clearly and very proudly he's going to represent the business interests on the Stewardship Council. Fine. Because that's a voice that needs to be heard. Ms. Marcus will represent an environmental voice on the council. But I must tell you, as she stated earlier, and I think she's being a little bit modest, frankly, and appropriately sensitive to not ruffling more feathers within the environmental community. But I can tell you that Ms. Marcus's biggest challenges in dealing with this water package were from some in the environmental community who hated what she was doing. And that's true of NRDC, and it's true of the Environmental Defense Fund, but especially Ms. Marcus. So if the question is, can she be independent? I know, for one, I don't have to guess the answer to that question. I've seen it. I saw it. I would attest to it. And Joe Caves is right. If you like the prospect of storage, if you like the prospect, not the guarantee, the possibility of alternative conveyance, is because Ms. Marcus took a leap and took a step, and she will be fair and impartial with an environmental bent, just like Mr. Fiorini will have an agriculture bent and Mr. Nardoff will have a business bent. That's what will make this a great stewardship council. I take a motion.
Before you take, I was going to make the motion until you started speaking, but
That's a quote of the day.
I realize that. I don't think that you can divorce yourself from who you are, and that means as part of the environmental community, et cetera. But I do think that you have convinced us, at least me, that you're an honest person, that you're going to make an honest attempt. We do know of your efforts with the package that was passed, and I think it's just a matter of trust. We're going to trust Mr. Fiorini to do the best he can, and we're going to trust you to do the best you can, as we do all of the 17 members of that council. And so I would be happy to make the motion. I'm not convinced that there won't be some kind of a perception of a conflict, but I am convinced that, especially as an attorney, you'll know the difference, and there'll be enough transparency that we'll adequately remind you if we see it isn't. So with that, I'm happy to make the motion.
Glad I made those closing remarks. Very good.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Please call the roll on the motion.
Senator Cedillo? Aye. Cedillo, aye. Dutton? Aye. Dutton, aye. Padilla? Aye. Padilla, aye. Onnested?
Aye.
Onnested, aye. Steinberg?
Aye.
Steinberg, aye.
5-0. This will move to the Senate floor, and we will take up your nomination forthwith.
Thank you.
And we thank you again for your service. I know it's difficult to balance everything, but we very much appreciate it.
I very much appreciate it.
Okay.
Thank you all very
good.
much.
All right. We now have a number of governors' appointees subject to confirmation but not required to appear. And as I stated earlier, we have moved from the agenda items 2E, F, G, and H, but that leaves B, C, D, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P through Z, and double A through double M. So are there any items that...
Yeah, if I could have us break out items P, Q, and double B.
Say it again, Senator. Can you start again, Senator Onnested?
P is in Peter, and Q is in Quick, and BB. And boy.
So those three you would like to be taken up separately?
If you could, please.
Can they be taken up separately together,
yes,
so to speak? Okay, so let's do every item under 2. Again, E, F, G, and H are off, but accepting P, Q, and double B. Motion by Senator Padilla. Any questions from the Democratic members? If not, please. P, Q, and double B.
Double B is in boy. Or Bob. BB.
Are we good? Take your time. We're good? Okay. Please call the roll.
Senator Cedillo? Cedillo, aye. Dutton?
Aye.
Dutton, aye. Padilla? Aye. Padilla, aye. Onnested? Onnested, aye. Steinberg?
Aye.
Steinberg, aye.
5-0. Now let's take up file items 2, P, Q, and double B.
Right.
Moved by Senator Cedillo. Please call the roll.
Senator Cedillo? Cedillo, aye. Dutton?
No.
Dutton, no. Padilla? Aye. Padilla, aye. Onnested? Onnested, no. Steinberg?
Aye.
Steinberg, aye.
Motion passes 3-2. Now we are there any questions on file items 3 through 26? I have some circles on my agenda.
Okay, which ones?
Just do 3. Is there a motion on file item 3? Moved by Senator Cedillo. Please call the roll.
Senator Cedillo? Aye. Cedillo, aye. Dutton? Padilla? Aye. Padilla, aye. Onestad? Steinberg?
Aye.
Steinberg, aye.
3 to, was it 3 to 1 or 3 to 2?
3 to 0.
3 to 0. Okay, so do you want to take each of these next items separately, Senator Onestad?
Just 4. You probably also wanted to take out, we want to separate 10, 11, 12, 18, 20, 26.
10, 11, 10, 11, 12, 18, 20, and 26, right?
Correct.
Let's do 5 through 26 with the exceptions of 10, 11, 12, 18, 20, and 26.
Yeah, that's right. If I could, I want to be consistent, so I'm going to abstain to number 5.
Let's accept 5 as well. Okay, let's take up 4 through 26 with the no, excuse me. 6 through 26 with the exception of 10, 11, 12, 18, 20, and 26. Right? Moved. Moved by Senator Cedillo. Call the roll, please.
Senator Cedillo? Aye. Cedillo, aye. Dutton? Aye. Dutton, aye. Padilla? Aye. Padilla, aye. Onestad? Onestad, aye. Steinberg?
Aye.
Steinberg, aye.
Let's take file item 5 for a moment here. This is Senator Blakesley's request to create a Cherry Select Committee on Recovery, Reform, and Realignment. Supportive of the request. Is there a motion? Moved by Senator Cedillo. Please call the roll.
Senator Cedillo? Aye. Cedillo, aye. Dutton? Padilla? Aye. Padilla, aye. Onestad? Onestad, no. Steinberg?
Aye.
Steinberg, aye.
3 to 1. Okay, Senators Onestad and Dutton, do you have an objection to us taking up 10, 11, 12, 18, 20, and 26 as a block? All together? Moved by Senator Cedillo. Please call the roll.
Senator Cedillo? Aye. Cedillo, aye. Dutton? Padilla? Aye. Padilla, aye. Onestad? No. Onestad, no. Steinberg?
Aye.
Steinberg, aye.
3-1-0. The motion passes. That leaves file item 4.
File item 4, the issue is raised by Senator Onestad that SB 602, as compared with SB 452, is violative of Joint Rule 54C, which says you can't author a bill that's the same as a bill that you introduced. And we have alleged counsel here to discuss the 2 bills that are at question.
It's 453 for the record, SB 453. I'm sorry. That's okay. Ms. Boyer-Vine, welcome.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Mr. Chair and members. I have Eric Dye with me as well from Ledge Council.
Welcome.
Thank you. As you said, it's actually comparing SB 602 in its June 7th form to SB, excuse me, I better put my glasses on, 453 to its introduced form. So under Joint Rule 54C, what we do is we look to see whether the bill that is in question, 602, has substantially the same effect to the other bill as introduced. Not all the versions of the other bill, just the introduced version. In looking at these 2 bills, we've concluded that SB 602 does not have substantially the same effect as SB 453, and Eric can explain in more detail why.
Well, usually we memorize every bill by number and content, but it might help just to give us a little bit of background here in terms of what the subject matter we're talking about for the public as well, if you could. Thanks.
Sure. Again, Eric Dye with Legislative Council. And both of these bills, SB 602 and SB 453, do relate to food safety, but SB 602, which is the bill that we're looking at to see if there's a JR 54C problem, it has a couple of different components to it. One component would require at least one of the accredited food safety facility certification examinations that are required under existing law to be offered online. The other main component to SB 602 is a requirement that food handlers that are defined in the bill obtain a food handler card. And those are the two primary components, as I understand SB 602 to have. SB 453 has one component in common with SB 602, in that it also requires at least one of the accredited food safety certification examinations required under existing law to be offered online, but it does not have the introduced version. I should make clear that the introduced version of SB 453 does not have the same requirement that food handlers have a food handler card. So that's kind of in a nutshell what each of them do, and also how they differ. So in that sense, because SB 602 has this other food handler card component that SB 453 does not, SB 602 would not have substantially the same effect as SB 453.
Okay. Senator Onnested, your issue?
All right, my issue is SB 602, which sits on Senate appropriations suspense, where it was not going to come off. So it's essentially a dead bill. Basically, the same language was put into a SB 453 over on the Assembly side, which had already gone through Senate approach suspense, or had gone through the process, was over in the Assembly for the purposes of coming back here to rules, which then went to the Health Committee last week. And I objected because both the Republican analysis and the Democrat analysis said, quote, the bill is, as is used in the code, substantially the same. I think where Legislative Counsel is wrong in this opinion is that the code says it would have the substantially the same effect. It doesn't matter about the wording or the language or some of the technicalities in it. The effect of both bills is exactly the same. And in fact, the committee Democrat analysis uses the word substantially the same. And so I objected. I thought it was a violation. I still do think it's a violation of 54C. And that's, as the vice chair rules, I thought that procedure is what we should be paying attention to. And I still maintain that the bill, the effect of the bill, comes to the same conclusion, whether it's the original version of 602 or the original version of 453 or the amended version. They all have the same effect, and that is the food safety compliant of every food handler in California.
Can we ask counsel then, because Senator Onnested, to paraphrase, is making the argument that the two bills are substantially similar, even if they're not identical. Senator Padilla, maybe you can help. And then
if I may, absolutely. These are my bills that we're talking about.
Oh, they are?
They are.
Okay. There we go.
As objectively as I can possibly say, and actually I thank Leg Counsel. I think they're very articulate in differentiating the substance of 602, the bill in question, and the original version of 453. When 453 was first introduced, its contents, most of its contents appear in the new 602. But if you look at 602 in its totality, I think the original version of 453 is a smaller provision of a now much bigger, more comprehensive bill. Yes, tackling the same general issue of food safety and specifically the training or education for food handlers. What 453 originally said has now become a small element of the bill and one mechanism for compliance of this greater proposals. So I believe, again, as objectively as I can possibly say it, that the bills are substantively not the same. Yes, it's touching the same issue, but it's therefore not a violation of the rule here, and would request that we make that finding and we refer the bill out for consideration by Health Committee.
Council.
I think Senator Padilla said it as clearly as we can say it. It is really per the rule looking at the introduced version. I understand the argument that if you looked at all versions of the bill, you might reach a different conclusion. We actually wouldn't have reached that conclusion even looking at all versions of the bills. But it's up to the Rules Committee to decide, and the Rules Committee also has applied the rule consistently to look at the introduced version of the bill.
So the formal question before the committee, Mr. Schmidt, is what?
Is it whether this bill is violative of Joint Rule 54C in that it represents substantially the same bill as SB 453 as introduced.
So Senator Onnested will make that motion.
Can I ask one thing?
One more comment.
Go.
And I know that it is the practice or the time-honored tradition to say as introduced. But the fact is when a bill is amended, that means that the author has agreed to that amendment. And I think it is wrong to look at a bill that has been amended as not being substantially different. So to say that we're going to go back to the bill as introduced, which is not in the code, it doesn't say necessarily, does it say as introduced?
It does. The rule says a member may not author a bill during session that would have substantially the same effect as a bill he or she previously introduced
okay.
during that session.
And my point is, once an author allows their bill to be amended, what is the difference? Is it now that we're going to split hairs and say that it's not the same bill if it gets, as amended, gets put into suspense, and so now he can now find another vehicle for the same language that was amended? I think we're splitting hairs and making a mockery out of 54C.
Well, certainly it's an appropriate subject for discussion at the beginning of the next session in terms of the rule itself. Senator Dutton?
Can you give us give me some kind of guidance on your definition of substantial? I mean, well, that's where the real problem really comes into, because, you know, Senator Ansted's definition of what is substantially the same may be different than what Senator Padilla's definition of substantially the same. And so I think that's really where this is coming down to, is the difference there. So I'm just curious, what do you use as an unbiased third party there?
Sure.
What's your definition of substantial?
I think that's a fair observation, Senator, that substantial is a difficult word to decide how you're going to analyze a bill. What we say is whether it has, effectively or materially the same effect as the other bill. And it's kind of looking at the bill, understanding the differences that are made in the code. I mean, I have to, does it do the same thing kind of language? And here we saw one bill that just did online registration, and as you said, Senator, 602 does that as well, but 602 does more than that. So 602 has a broader effect than the other bill.
So in this case here, substantial to you would be if you have one bill that does this, but then the other bill, you just happen to put what this was into another bill, but it goes far beyond, that to you would be a substantial differential between the bills. Yes. Even though they may have some similarities, yes. The fact is that the one in question right now has more in it. You're considering that to make it then substantially different?
More may not be entirely accurate, because more could be more of the same of what the first bill did.
Or different. I mean, it includes more whatever it is.
And for example, in 602, it's got a misdemeanor provision if you do not comply with this, obtaining this card for food handlers. That's pretty different from just requiring something online. You actually are creating a crime in the bill. So yes, it's more, but more than more. I mean, it has an effect that's broader on the general population who handles food.
Okay.
Senator?
I was just going to suggest that perhaps a couple of perspective to review this. The council has given us a difference, a distinction with the difference. And part of that is to look at its impact on the citizenry. So could you say, I've complied with this, if you did what you did in the first introduced legislation, and yet you didn't comply with the other components, and could you stand before a judge or an arbitrator or someone who would determine your compliance and say, well, look, I did that. And if there is something that goes beyond those bright lines and you fail to comply and you are held in jeopardy, that seems to me to be, and this is what's been represented, to be something that's really a distinction with a difference. And so while it may serve in terms of the policy arena the same impact, protection of the public health, protection of our food sources, those goals are accomplished, but the impact in terms of the residents of California who fail to comply, there's jeopardy in one and not jeopardy in another. And I think in this instance, it's been articulated that holds for the people of California.
Okay, I think, again, I think next year be an interesting discussion for the Rules Committee to have, especially given Ms. Boyer-Vine's literal reading of the statute, which talks about bill introduction.
Yeah, I'd like to see us at the very beginning.
Sure.
All operating on the same.
Okay. Senator Onnested asks for an aye vote on the motion. Just call the roll.
Senator Cedillo. Dutton. Senator Dutton? Did Cedillo?
No.
No. Cedillo, no. Dutton? Aye. Dutton, aye. Padilla? No. Padilla, no. Onnested?
Aye.
Onnested, aye. Steinberg?
No.
Steinberg, no.
All right. The motion's defeated 2-3, but thank you. Sure. The bill, is that properly before the committee then, given the agenda?
Not right at this moment.
That can be done informally.
In the course of working the bills.
We'll take care of it. Okay, very good. Thank you very much. All right, if there's nothing else coming before the committee, we do have an executive session. I'm sorry, there's one walk-on item. This is the Education Committee wants to have an informational hearing on Race to the Top and School Boards Association and LA Unified School District, okay? Without objection, we'll substitute the unanimous roll call on that measure. 5-0. On the well, there's one. We should probably actually are supposed to be executive session now.